Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowering Leaders podcast. At Aleda, we are passionate about inspiring connections and creating a world of collaboration. Our signature program, Aleda Connect, curates groups of 5 to 6 leaders from diverse backgrounds in sport, industry, social venture and the arts who come together to learn, to connect and to collaborate.
It's been amazing. Here you are on this Zoom call, feeling within the first session like you intimately know these people and care for them. And then all of a sudden realizing that even though you're in totally different industries, we're all going through the same thing, or we've been through it and we can help each other, or there's just this hurdle that you can't see past. And then you share it with the group and there's 5 answers in 40 minutes and you think, I have not slept for 2 weeks thinking about that. Like, how is this possible?
So you're listening to stories and the breadcrumbs of what makes success, and I constantly get something out of these Zoom calls and catch-ups because we're all living the same stuff, aren't we?
Extraordinary people with extraordinary experience. What happens there is magical.
The Empowering Leaders podcast is proudly brought to you by Victoria University, where cutting-edge sports and exercise science facilities like heat chambers, performance labs, and altitude environments mean VU is ranked 7th in the world for sports science. VU, uniquely you. As always, a big thank you to Jason Nicholas and his team at Temper Bedding, a mattress like no other. If you enjoy listening to the Empowering Leaders podcast, be sure to subscribe, and please, if you have a moment, we would love you to leave a review so we can reach more listeners and empower more leaders. Today we have the privilege of speaking to a true pioneer in the world of high-performance sales and leadership. Todd Duncan is the founder and CEO of the Duncan Group, a premier coaching and training organisation dedicated to transforming sales professionals into trusted advisors. With over 17 books to his name, including a couple of New York Times bestsellers, High Trust Selling, Make More Money in Less Time with Less Stress, and Time Traps, Proven Strategies for Swamped Salespeople, Todd has empowered millions to elevate their careers and their lives. Dubbed by CNN as the Tony Robbins of the mortgage industry, it's a testament to his profound impact on sales professionals worldwide. Todd, it's a great pleasure to meet you today.
It is so awesome to connect with you today, Luke. It's a blessing to be here, and I look forward to our conversation.
And in these conversations, Todd, you do your homework and your research, and there's hours and hours of questions I've got for you. But sometimes you sit down from the table with someone, and before we start the conversation, go somewhere completely different. And if you don't mind, because you did say, "Hey, I'm an open book. Let's talk about anything." We wandered in. I was asking you about your beautiful partner who's here, your beautiful wife, and you were sharing with me, your family history and the story and some challenges about it. And are you happy to start there?
Sure. Yeah. I think, one of the big breakthroughs is that I think all of us probably at some point have a dream for our life, maybe a plan for our life. And no matter how we try to architect that plan, things happen, right? Life happens and stuff happens. And I was always a big believer in life planning, a big believer in kind of mapping out like ahead to 80. Where do you want to be at 80 or where do you want to be at 90? And you can write the most grandiose plans. And I think I learned a couple of things. One, life's going to throw you curveballs, and probably the bigger the dream, the more curveballs you're going to get or the more adversity you might get. The other thing I learned is that to be fluid is a gift, and that adversity is a gift. And when tough things happen and tough times happen, oftentimes there's a gift in those things. And so I had a season where my wife was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer and was given 3 months to live, and it wasn't part of that life plan. And I began to understand how serious this was, how permanent this was, and that if she did pass, that I would be, the single dad of 2 young teenagers, 13 and 11 years old, and it was not part of the life plan, and it wasn't part of the, the dream goal of retiring and traveling the world and all that kind of stuff. And I remember her passing, and I remember how hard that was. And I remember leaning against the wall one day crying next to one of her pictures in our home. And my 13-year-old son came up to me and he said, "Dad, you got to do what you teach people to do." And I'm sitting here crying. And I go, "What's that, John?" And he goes, "You got to keep going." And he said, "Dad, we need you." And it wasn't like that was part of the plan. I mean, I'm a present dad. I was an active dad. I'm a memory-making dad, all that kind of stuff. But she's gone. And the boy's mom is gone at 13 and 11. And I remember that moment in time. And it was one of those things where you start to realize that, okay, this is the next thing I need to get through. Come to find out, about a year and 4 months later, I started dating again. She had told the boys I'd probably fall in love again and it would be okay if I did and whatnot. And I found a beautiful woman that I fell in love with. And unbeknownst to me, the boys had started drugs and alcohol to deal with their trauma. And I had never been through something like that, dealing with trauma. And I was dealing with my own trauma. But a year afterwards, I knew there was nothing I could do about her cancer. And I knew that we had a great life together, spent 25 years together. And now I have this beautiful woman in my life, and the boys are still suffering from a trauma. And the short story, Luke, is they fell into a deep, deep addiction, and I didn't know how to handle that. They say that alcoholism is a family disease. I now understand kind of what that means. And when you're dealing with trauma and you're dealing with covering that trauma up through drugs and alcohol, and you're trying to figure out, how do I actually manage that? The hardest thing in the world is to understand that tough love is tough love, because it's tough love and it's tough to give and it's tough to honor and it's tough to set boundaries that are harsh and hard. But COVID hits and I had to call in 2 buddies because I could not talk to them, because the boundary that we had set is, until you're sober, I'm not in your life. That's the hardest thing for a dad to do. One boy was terminated for a DUI, stealing a car and kidnapping a person, and was in jail for 5 nights and lost his job, and that was his hitting bottom. He's now 4.5 years sober, very purposeful, got married 3 weeks ago, and is switched on for his faith and whatnot. And my younger son wrote a suicide letter, and in that letter drew a noose around the word hell. And the suicide letter said, hanging on is hell. And a day later, he woke up hungover, did a bunch of cocaine, did a bunch of alcohol, got on his Harley Davidson with a blood alcohol level of 4 times legal, with a skateboarding helmet on, not even a motorcycle helmet, and crashed his motorcycle at 80 miles an hour and hit a pole on the freeway head on. The skateboarding helmet shattered, and he hit this pole full force with his head. And the miracle was that he was 5 minutes from USC Trauma Center. That's the only thing that saved his life. And 19 hours later, after 4 brain surgeries, he was in a coma for 2.5 months. I came out of that coma, had to learn how to walk again, had to learn how to talk again, permanent damage, facial paralysis, loss of hearing in the left ear. And as a dad, to get a call from a hospital telling you your son has 2 hours to live, you need to get here, and knowing there's nothing you can do. But I had to authorize these surgeries, and one of the things I really believe in is boldness and bravery are 2 very, very important leadership attributes. And when they asked me to authorize the amputation of his arm, I told them I can't do that, and they said, you have to. The arteries are severed, the bone is shattered, there's no way to repair the arm. I said, you have to repair the arm. I don't know how you're going to do it. I'm not a doctor, but if you take his arm off, he will kill himself because he's a musician. And if he can't play guitar, it's over. And they said, there's an experiment we can do. We can pull some arteries out of the leg. We can put a titanium sleeve around the humerus, and it might work. And it worked. And 9 months later, he took up the guitar again and now has a 18-inch scar down his arm that's upside down across. And he's playing beautiful music and getting his life back and writing songs and talking to high schoolers all over America on podcasts about health and wellness. And I never believed that I could lose both boys to drugs and alcohol. And I had hope that if they got to the other side, they would be as healthy as they are today. And I look back on all that journey, and it's half of their life, and the next part of their life is going to be much more purposeful and much more invigorating, and they've chosen sobriety over drugs and institutions or death.
Wow, mate!
That's an opening.
Well, it's what I love about these conversations, Todd, and it's incredibly generous of you to do that. And you don't read that online, you don't hear the research, and often you go to the highlights of people's lives. You've written 17 books, you've spoken to millions of people, you've helped people make money, you've changed the face of sales. But what's behind everyone, we've all got one of those stories, not maybe as extreme as that. That's heavy duty to have experienced that, but not many people want to talk about that often. They want to talk about the highlight reel. So it is incredibly generous of you to do that. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like saying to your sons, I'm not in your life again until you sort yourself out. That must have been as hard a day as you can get, isn't it?
Well, it's the hardest day you'll ever have, and the next day is even harder because you got to honor that commitment. And what ends up happening in business, what ends up happening with leaders is, we empower people. We tell them the way we'd like something done, and we explain it in a way that hopefully is not only heartfelt but economically and emotionally balanced. And they don't honor it, or they don't do it, or they make a mistake, and we lose the boundary in terms of its original intent. And what ends up happening is when there's a boundary set and people see that the leader, in this case would be the dad, picking up the phone the next day, come on, Dad, give me another chance, or come on, Dad, I'm going to get through this, or Dad, I need you and you need to be in my life. I literally blocked my kids. And I knew that they could find help at AA. I knew they could find help with, the things that they were doing to try to get help and to get sober. I called in 2 friends just to be mediaries who both understood addiction. And the hardest thing besides setting the boundary was honoring the boundary. And then the hardest thing after both of those moments was to still have the boundary and watch them become sober. And my son that was fired, it took him not only being in jail and me not bailing him out and making him sell all of his assets to afford the legal fees and all of that, he still drank for another 4 months until he got in a fight and almost killed somebody. And he realized that, you know what, I'm done with alcohol. He called me one day and he said, Dad, I'm done and I'm ready to surrender. And he went into AA and got back involved in church, and here he is today, married, happy, employed, and it's hard. It's hard.
It's an amazing story, yeah. and thankfully I'm sitting across a happy ending at the end of it. Yeah. There's so many times that probably couldn't have been, and yeah, as we were talking on the way into the studio, you and I were just striking up that conversation around not life just throwing. It's the Mike Tyson quote, I think, all the time. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face, and literally,
right? Yeah,
literally that happens to all of us. And yeah, for you to got this smiling demeanour and this happy existence, it's you've obviously been able to do it. Because a lot of shame for parents, isn't there? When things don't turn out. I mean, I love the parenting conversation. I've got 4 of my own kids, Todd, and to me, it's the thing you want to be. The best thing you could possibly be in life is that. But there's so many layers to it and so many things out of your control. Do you find that's a lot of shame for parents when things go wrong?
I think there's shame and there's embarrassment, and yet when you disassociate with the fact that, and I told both my boys repeatedly, listen, you guys are great guys. It's not your fault that you have lost your mother, and it is not your fault that you have addictive tendencies, and it is not your fault that the disease of drugs and alcohol is something you got to battle. And I read a letter that was called the letter from the alcoholic to their parents. And it said something like, you wouldn't be mad at me if I had cancer. You wouldn't be mad at me if I had diabetes. Don't be mad at me because I'm an addict, because it's a disease. And that was a really, really important turning point for me, because oftentimes we think they have the willpower to overcome the disease. Nobody has the willpower to overcome the disease of addiction, just like they don't have the willpower to overcome the disease of cancer or diabetes. But what they can do is make different choices for healthier, whatever you want to fill the blank in with, right?
Yeah.
And so for somebody who's addicted, and for my youngest son who crashed, he'd wake up at 6, have his first hit of pot, and he would have his last hit of pot at 10 a.m. and that 10 p.m. that night, and that was his day. And he had an addiction, and the only way that addiction could be treated was from him going through what he went through and making the decision that life was more important than death. He fought it in the coma. I never knew this, Luke, but when you're in a coma, you have clear recall if you make it to the other side of what happened in the coma. And he had a fight going on every day between doctors in black cloaks and doctors in white cloaks. And he said the doctors in black cloaks came through and they wanted to kill me, and the doctors in white came through and they wanted to save me. And one day the doctor in white that was at the head of the pack for some reason had a halo on, and I decided that day that I was going to choose life. He's in a coma. He's not expected to live, and he chose life in the coma. This is coming from my son, who's crystal clear on what happened in that coma. And I'm sitting here going, holy cow, because I never even thought that you could be battling for your life while sick, while on life support. And so I want to give every parent, anybody who knows people that go through the difficulty of some traumatic event like that, that there's decisioning that can go on in the emotional soul and the intellectual soul that might remain of the brain to, I'm going to choose life. So grateful that he did, obviously. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think all of us just need to understand that life is tricky. And no matter how well laid out our plans are, there's going to be adversity. There's going to be a need for you to pivot. There's going to be a need for you to change your plan. And the only way not to have any adversity in life is to stand still and just let it pass you by.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people that listen to you and listen to this podcast are willing to just sit by and kind of let life happen to them. But I have found that the bigger the dream, the bigger the challenges. And if the dream is purposeful, then the challenges are valuable. And there shouldn't be a dream that isn't really purposeful. Otherwise, it's a pipe dream, right? And so why do we want to do what we do? And what are we prepared to go through to get to the other side and do it? And what is the core reason why we're doing what we're doing? And especially in leadership. I mean, I wake up every day as a leader and I ask two questions. Who deserves my praise today? And who can I help win today? And my leadership pattern is like, if I can reach out to people on my team, people in my circle, people that are in my kind of influence environment, how can I help you? How can I help you today? How can I help you win today? Or, you know, who can I go out of the way to let them know that what they did yesterday was super meaningful, super impactful. I try to do that with my boys. I try every day to praise them for something. And it's powerful when you have that mindset as a leader.
And so to get to the other part of your life, the headline part of your life, and the sales word has been something that you've clearly got a mastery of, and a idea that has sold many books, and you've been able to influence a lot of people. There's this sort of connotation. I don't know if it's an Australian thing, Todd, or it translates to America, but the idea of a salesperson in Australia comes with this sort of image in my mind of someone selling snake oil door to door. And when you think about it, though, logically, every business has got to sell something. Do you understand why that negative connotation is there at times? And obviously, you've been able to forge a path that is the direct opposite of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that the thing for me is the stereotyping of even the word sales, right? And when you think about the tectonic shifts that can happen in somebody's mind about what do all of us do? All of us have ideas, and all of us tend to get excited about our ideas. And if we're in the business of sales, quote unquote, we actually are in the business of either serving or solving. And if we can take the connotation of snake oil and selling and commission breath and all these kinds of things that end up happening, there's two decisions that somebody can make to understand that the world is about ideas, and the world is about solving people's gap between where they are and where they want to be. It doesn't matter whether it's a CEO that needs to make a decision for their company, or whether it's an individual that might be able to do this and as a result of doing this get to a different place in life. And so two things happened to me early on. I came out of university. I had a degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing, and that was kind of close to sales, but then finance. And early in my career, I had a mentor, and he said, I will mentor you only if you understand the question that you need to answer. And he said, you need to choose between transactions and relationships. And I was naive enough to know, Luke, that I needed transactions because I needed money. And I was also smart enough to let him tell me the difference because I didn't want to answer it the wrong way. And I said, I'm happy to answer it, but can you tell me just a little bit more about what each one means? As a 23-year-old salesperson, this mentor said, transactions will make you a living. Relationships will make you a fortune. And I will only mentor you if you choose the relationship route. And from the age of 23 until today, my motto has been, everybody that I know now knows the people I need to know. I'm never going to make a cold call. I'm never going to sell hard. I'm never even going to talk about buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. I'm going to build my life and my business around relationships. You and I are sitting here today, not because I called you and said, hey, I'm in town and I need to do a podcast with you. You and I are sitting here today because somebody knew somebody that knew somebody that knew you. And so there's no selling today.
Yeah.
You didn't invite me here because I sold you on the idea of coming here. You and I are here today having this amazing conversation because somebody thought it was worthwhile. And so I would just tell everybody, we don't sell anything to anybody. Yes, you have ideas. Yes, you have vision. But a relationship is about the human capacity to connect emotionally and in business do things economically that change the world.
Beautifully summed up, and yeah, I love relationships are everything. As you said, we're brought together today by an old friendship, and that's the beauty of life. To me, there'll be people listening to this that say, "Hey, that sounds great. So I get it, I really get it, but shit, I've got a sales quota here. I've got a boss who's saying to me, if I don't meet that quota, I don't get to go and feed the family." So how do you coach people to put relationships first in those high-pressure scenarios?
Well, even in a high-pressure scenario, I could be here today. I've never met you before. I met you 25 minutes ago in the lobby. And I could sit here today, and it could not be about a podcast. It could not be about a conversation. And I could say to you, "Hey, Luke, I'm in the business of helping people win. I'm in the business of helping brands grow. Help me understand what's important about you, your brand, and what you want to do in your life that maybe I could help you with." That's all I have to ask, and I shut up and I let you tell me. And if there's a resonation between what you say and what I know I can do, then I've asked you a question that tells me what's important to you emotionally about what you do. And if I can tell you how I can help you achieve emotionally what you would like, then you and I can get along fine and we can do some very, very cool stuff together. If I have a quota, the pressure on quota management, I understand P&Ls, I understand generating cash, I understand quotas, but we are more likely to fulfill a quota with fewer people that can activate more sales than many people that can activate one sale. And I tell people this all the time. If I have a quota to sell 1,000 units of whatever, I have two choices. I can try to get 1,000 single orders, or I can talk to 10 people that know 10 people that can accelerate the introduction to people that can use and buy what I have. And by the way, if I'm referred to somebody, you've never met me before, and I hope that you trust me. And I've never met you before, and I trust you. And that's the power of relationship. So I'd rather accelerate quota because people know the people you need to know than I would to cold call 900 people and try to sell 900 more gadgets or widgets or whatever, right? And so I think that, again, there's technical sales relationship, there's high-ticket sales relationship. You know, it could be, the quota would be $1,010 units of something. Could you, I don't know, could I sell 24 books to 24 people? Or could I go deep and sell one case of books to one person of 24 units? That's how I've always thought. And most of the companies I talk to believe that more from less is one of the strongest strategies there is in business development, because trust goes up, tension goes down. When trust goes up, pricing concerns go down. When trust goes up, speed to deal together goes up. When trust goes up, shopping other options goes down. Less price negotiation, less haggling, less all of that, right? My entire business, meeting you here today, every appointment I've had in Melbourne in the last 5 days has been with somebody I did not know when I landed. That's 5 days ago. That's how real this is.
I'm thinking of a guest I had on the podcast who's become a great friend, actually. Dr. Michael Hewitt-Gleason was a business partner to Edward de Bono and founded the School of Thinking and Lateral Thinking, and he did a PhD in selling, went to America, the land of the sale, and he said was so unimpressed by, you know, ring the bell and all this crap that he said, just he couldn't believe how ineffective it was. And it sounds like he sings from a very similar hymn book as you. One of his acronyms that we use all the time in our world is the idea of, he calls it wombat selling, word of mouth, buy and tell, and that you get these super wombats in your world who love you, love the product, high trust, and they can pass it on to many, many people. Is that in keeping with what you're saying? Is that when you get high trust with people, when you build those relationships and they share it, it's often much more powerful than any other tool? It's
100% more powerful. In fact, the third thing that I would say, so we've talked about relationship over transactions. We've talked about the idea that we don't sell anything. We solve people's needs and provide them with something they actually want. And then the third piece is if we do that, then we actually have a built-in quote unquote sales force, right? So I'll give you an example. When we understand relationship and we try to build businesses, we can still hear the word no. When we build relationships, we can still have resistance, right? I had a very large bank that I wanted to do business with, and they told me the moment that I followed up with them to see if we could schedule an appointment, they made it very clear that as much as they appreciated my approach, they didn't vendor-base their sales training. And I said, that's okay. And she goes, what? And I go, no, that's okay. And she goes, what do you mean it's okay? And I said, well, if you don't vendor-base your sales training, would you be opposed to me sending you information from time to time that you might find valuable for your team? And if you choose to use it, great. And if you choose not to use it, great. No problem at all. She goes, you would do that? And I go, yeah. She goes, why? And I go, well, if your policy ever changes, I'd like you to think about me. She said, sure. So I sent every 3 months 500 CDs and 500 lesson plans, no strings attached. And I sent them to Ginger, and she distributed them to sales. I did it every single quarter for 3.5 years. 3.5 years later, she called me and she said, I have good news, Todd. Mickey retired. And I go, who's Mickey? And she goes, Mickey's my boss. He's the guy that had the policy that we don't vendor base our sales training. I have more good news. And I go, what's the next piece of good news? And she goes, I just took Mickey's job. And I changed the policy, so I'd like to engage you on a contract, and I'd like to get going as soon as possible. And that contract was a very, very large contract, and that's not even the most important part of the story. My philosophy is that it's never a matter of if, it's only when. And the when is determined by the value you provide to the prospect. And the retention of that prospect once they become a client is determined by the value you provide after the sale. And I find people will jump through hoops to get a deal done, but then they don't do the same kind of thing to keep the business going. She gave me business for 28 years until she retired. And what I'm telling your audience, what I'm telling the world is that loyalty is a two-way street. And if you're in relationship building, you have to understand the most powerful thing that will ever happen is word of mouth. And word of mouth brings in twice the business and brings in twice the lifetime value of a customer. Okay, we call it endorsement value. And endorsement value is somebody that you know saying to you, this guy Todd's in town and you've got to meet with him. That's endorsement value. The other thing that happens with WOM, word of mouth, wombats, I love it. The other thing that happens with WOM is you don't have any call reluctance. You don't have any fear of talking to somebody that's been referred to you. In fact, you wake up excited and you go, wow, Luke referred me to this guy, Jimmy, and Jimmy just sounds like, but that happened because of Luke. It didn't happen because I found Jimmy somewhere and tried to do business with him. So I find that, when I was in real estate, I helped almost 6,000 people buy real estate in about 11 and a half years. 93% of them were repeat or referral clients. That's an easy way to build a business. And that should be happening everywhere.
We all are born different. As we grow, the experiences we have develop into outlooks uniquely our own, charting our life's course. No one sees an idea, opinion, or opportunity like you. And no one sees you like VU. Victoria University. Uniquely you.
At Aleda, our signature program, Aleda Connect, is something we're really passionate and proud of. We bring together groups of 5 to 6 people around the globe from diverse backgrounds, sport, industry, social venture and the arts, who come together to learn, to connect and to collaborate.
The thing that I've loved about it is not just the meetings that we have with our group, it's the thinking that you do for days and days afterwards. Someone says something and it sparks a thought, and I found that I would go back and look at things that I was doing in a different light. Within my sport and within women's sport, I'm just someone who I try to lead by keeping people talking about the issues. There's times when I think the person I'm trying to convince is not listening to me. It actually got me thinking about, okay, this is how I need to address my communication with them. So it was so valuable, and the little group that we've got is great, and I'm really looking forward to sort of continuing to connect with them into the future because we're all so very different. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it.
You've written a best-selling book about trust and high trust selling. I think you articulated a great story on that. For people starting out, how do you build trust?
So trust is the hardest thing to gain. It's the easiest to lose, and it's the most important to hang on to. And so the way to build trust, besides endorsement value and word of mouth, is to take the spotlight off of you and your product and put it solely on the client. We just came from a car dealership where the average price of a car is probably $700,000, and I was asked to do a little program on how do we get past anything in terms of not being able to leverage that sale. And I said to them, the less you talk, the more likely they'll sign the contract. And they're going, what do you mean by that? And I go, no, you talk less to sell more. You don't talk more to sell more. And what ends up happening is there's two things at play all the time, trust and tension. If I'm not referred to somebody, the tension's high and the trust is low. And if I try to engage in a sales conversation when trust is low and tension's high, I'm going to get resistance. I'm going to get objections. I'm going to get feedback. I'm going to hear people say, I got to think about it, or I already have a provider, or I got to talk to my partner about it, or this, that, or the other thing. And when I'm referred and somebody says, this guy Todd, he's the best mortgage lender in town. He's done all my mortgages. You're a good friend of mine. I want you to know that you can trust Todd with all of the financing decisions on the mortgage you're going to take out to buy the home that you're going to buy. Can I have Todd call you? And when that friend says yes and I call, trust is already there and tension is gone. And so then the second thing I have to do is, instead of jumping into a conversation, I have to ask that person a question. So like somebody might be buying their first home, and my question is going to be, help me understand what's important about owning your first home to you. And I train people all over the world on questions to ask like that. And I say, if you have a great 10-word question and it's an emotional question and you just let the client answer it, you'll see what emotional connection is all about. And people don't buy until they're emotionally connected. And the higher price of anything, the more emotion is required. And so when you sell logically and talk about all the features and benefits of a $700,000 car, about 80% of them they don't care about. But if you open the doors and you just let them look inside the car and they say, well, what's that? Or what's this? Or what's that? You can then talk about it without having commission breath and without thinking that you're just feature selling and this, that, and the other thing. But the most important question to ask is, what's important about owning a car like this to you? What will it do for you? What will it give you? Now, it's not about a $700,000 car. It could be about a $70,000 loan, or it could be about a $7,000 piece of art. It doesn't matter. What matters is the higher the price of anything, the more emotional connection is required. And when you connect emotionally, then you don't have to sell. And I tell people all the time, turn down the promotion, turn up the emotion. And when you connect with people emotionally, you not only earn their trust, but you accelerate trust. And then they want more of you because they trust you because you connected with them in the heart before you went to the mind. People buy emotionally, they don't buy economically.
It seems to me there's a word, and it all generally makes sense. I mean, and that's commission breath. It makes me laugh every time you say it. But I think we're all scarred from those experiences. And I love looking at houses, and you walk in and you get, and I do my best to run away from the 8 questions that you're going to get asked that you don't feel authentic. It feels like it's pushing at the 5 questions to work out. Are you about to get divorced? How can I get hold of your business? I mean, I'm assuming emotional connections mean nothing without authenticity. How do you teach that?
You can't have them. You can't have emotional connection without authenticity, and that's what makes this such a game changer. If you look at your example of looking at real estate, and the first thing they do is go through their checklist of questions, and they put you on the spot, and maybe you don't want to answer some of those questions. Maybe you're embarrassed about the divorce or this, that, or the other thing. That's not going to do any good for anything. Forget for a moment that people in that business and people in so much business are horrible at following up anyway. But if I were to just say to you something as easy as, hey, appreciate you stopping by. I know your time's important to you. What are you looking for right now in a home, whether it's this one or any other home? And that's all I have to do. And then if you tell me something, I'm going to go, tell me what's important about that to you. I had somebody the other day that had a husband and wife that were relocating from Anchorage, Alaska to Portland, Oregon, and they were first-time home buyers. And I taught them to talk less, sell more. I taught 200 mortgage brokers talk less, sell more. And I said, in 30 days, we're going to get back together, and I want you to tell me a story. So this guy, Tim, volunteers, and he said I was working with a husband and wife that were being transferred from Anchorage down to Portland, knew the real estate agent locally that works with me, and just kind of had some real quick small talk. We were on Zoom, and I looked him in the eyes and I said, I know you guys are buying your first home. Help me understand what's important about owning a home to you. And as he tells the story, the wife started crying immediately. And the husband shortly followed with tears down his own cheeks. And about 45 seconds went by, and the husband said to Tim, if we could buy a home, we'd be the first family in the history of our family lineage to own real estate. And they have tears streaming down their face. And all Tim said is, I'm going to make that happen for you. Are you ready to get started? That was the only closing question he needed. It wasn't even closing. It was just like, and what he tells, as he tells the story, 90 days later, he had 13 referrals from the same plant that was relocating people from Anchorage down to Portland. 13 referrals for another $5 or $6 million in loan volume. And I tell people all the time that if you don't connect, you can't convert. There's no conversion of somebody that's a prospect to a client if you don't connect with them, or the conversion's very low. When I was in real estate, it was like, do you talk to 4 people to get a deal, or do you talk to 1? I had a mentor that said, talk to 10 people. If 9 people say no and you were going to make $1,000, put $100 in your pocket and just fake it. Fake it till you make it. And I said to him, that's a flawed strategy. And he goes, why? And I go, because 9 no's hurt. When 9 people say no, and you're supposed to make a great first impression, and then your only odds now are to make a better second impression. He goes, well, but what's your idea? And I go, be so good and be so connected that you make 1 call and somebody says yes. And he goes, you're naive. And I go, no, I'm rich. And it's relationship. And I'm rich in relationship because I don't need to talk to 10 people. I need to talk to 1. And if that 1 and I connect, then that 1 can connect me with somebody else. And when you look at the circle of cash flow, which is like the people know the people that you need to know, I started a new tech company, and it's all about like Netflix for learning and personal development, and it's just that model, and it was to democratize learning all over the world. And my tech partner said, so how do we get all these instructors? And I said, I know a guy. And he goes, what do you mean you know a guy? And I go, no, I know a guy that has published thousands of books. And if I call him, he can probably refer us to any instructor we need. And our goal, Luke, was to have 25 instructors by the end of last year. Last year, just what, 9 months ago, right? 8 months ago. And within 3 months, we had 65 referrals to authors that are all over the world that are now on our team. And so we have 65 instructors. And then he said, so how do we get to the companies that might be able to sign up their employees for our new tech platform, which is called Fuel? And I said, well, we have 65 instructors. They're all professional speakers. They already know all the people we need to know. And so one speaker refers us to the #1 payroll company in the world. Who do you know who knows who you want to know? Circle of Cash Flow. So now not only are they bringing all of their training over to our platform, but they're engaging us with, I think their employee count is north of 65,000 people. But even more important than that is if you ask the person at this company, well, what's your business model look like, and how could we do something for your business clients? And one of the conversations had to do with how many small businesses do you do payroll for? And the answer was 3 million. And so the next obvious step was, if you're already engaging us to provide learning for your employees, why don't we take that same learning and give it to your 3 million business clients? People know the people that you need to know. There's no fear there. There's no like, I'm scared. There's no call reluctance. It's just like, if you understand this, you understand that if you need another client, you already know the people that can make the introduction to that client. And that's the beauty of relationship selling. And if we connect, then we convert. If we convert, then we have more consistency in business. And if we have more consistency in business, we make more profits as a result of that connection. That's what I got on that.
People love talking about the stats of startup businesses and the rate of failure astronomical and how often it goes wrong. There'll be a lot of people listening who have got a business they're working incredibly hard at, or whatever area of their life they want to succeed at, what's the one piece of advice you'd pass on?
I think the one piece of advice is that whatever you want to do, there's a way to do it. And I think that one of the interesting things is if you understand that the mind can do more than both hands, then you understand that observation is your friend. And if you understand that observation is your friend, you'll always know that there's a better way to do something, which can lead to a new company or just being better at the company you're at. And if you understand observation is your friend, then you will understand that adversity is your gift. And I told you in the lobby that, that I'm in the event business and I sell tickets for people to come to venues and sit down and, listen for days to these conferences that we host. And when COVID hit, it was like, I don't know what to do. I don't think anybody's going to fly. I don't think anybody's going to buy a ticket. This is a big deal for our company. What should we do? And we got the team together and they said, let's try live streaming. Our only intent, Luke, was to provide the same event in a COVID environment so that we could still get to the people and help them. And we made this decision to live stream. And the second day of the event, we had 44,000 devices connected in 13 countries around the world. That was not part of the plan. The plan was just bring the event to the people. And that gave me an idea. If 44,000 devices can be connected to me in my event, how many devices could we have connected if we had 100 instructors around the world using AI, using the technology of using AI to voice translate and to create digital twins? And I had no idea. That was never part of a plan. But Garth Brooks said that his dad taught him one important lesson. And the guy sold more music than any other musician in country music history. He said, my father always said that with every curse, there's a blessing. And with every blessing, there's a curse. And I would just say, celebrate the blessings and look for the opportunity in the curse. We all have hard stuff, but there can be a seed planted in that hard stuff that can be an observational breakthrough. And that's what we did.
So we love this idea that success leaves clues and there's patterns to why people have successful lives and through that adversity and the hardship. And we see these sort of dimensions. And I want to ask you a few of these questions along those lines, starting with this idea of self-leadership. Hard to lead others, we think, unless you have an idea of what you do for yourself. What do you do for you to feel at your best so that you can impact the way you want to impact?
Yeah. First thing I say is to always self-leadership is the key to any leadership. And so self-leadership is about purpose, and it's about being very clear on why you get up in the morning and why you're doing what you're doing. So I go through a ritual every morning where I have some mindset activity. I go through some movement with my body. I go through some meditation. I remind myself of my purpose. I read my dream board, and I just populate my mind with what am I doing today as a leader that's based on where I think my life should be and where I want to go. All going back to the start of our conversation, I know that there's stuff that's not going to go the right way, but I do that. So self-leadership is being very clear on your purpose, and it's about making sure that you are congruent with that purpose in all that you do. If I have an opportunity to, my purpose is to make a transformational difference in every soul I meet. Now, I can't do that if I speak to hundreds of thousands of people, but I can do it in a way that leaves something with them that transforms them. And so I orient my day around that. Self-leadership in my mind also is the profound ability to say no to everything that gets in the way of you living your purpose. And that's a hard, tall order to give to listeners right now. But I will tell you that the only way that you can have more time to say yes to the things that matter more to you is to say no to the things that don't. And the longer a priority is ignored, the more of a priority it will become. And that's self-leadership.
Yeah, great answer. Really clear. And we see that people have a really clear view of exactly as you spoke about of what they do daily to have the effect that they want to have. What's the one piece of leadership advice you pass on the most?
I think there's two things. One that comes to mind immediately is that don't ask people to do things unless there's a relationship between what you're asking them to do and some kind of feedback. I remember early on, I had to fill out a call report, being back to sales, right, and commission breath. And so it was a 3-page report, and I was growing in my sales, and I was becoming more and more in the top producer club, and I still had to fill out this call report. And I remember it took about an hour to fill out. It was 3 pages long. And one day I just kind of scratched my head and I said, I wonder why my sales leader never talks to me about my report. And so one day on the 3rd page of the report, I wrote, Bob, if you read this page, let me know and I'll take you to lunch. And he never, ever replied to that statement I made on the 3rd page. And what I realized is that there's too much movement without purpose. There's too many things that people are being asked to do without some sense of relational accountability and feedback. So the one thing I would say is that. The other thing is I would say that if you create a culture of celebration, okay, and you go out of your way to praise people. I learned something early on from Jim Rohn, who used to say all the time before he died, a good friend of mine, success leaves clues. But I also learned from Ken Blanchard, a great leadership trainer from America. He used to say a pat on the back is only a few inches above a kick in the ass. And it makes all the difference in the person that you're patting on the back. And so he said, following that, he goes, catch people doing things right. And to me, that's the greatest leadership lesson you could ever pass along is if you catch people doing things right, you'll have a culture of winning. If you catch people doing things wrong, they're going to be fearful of taking action and feeling empowered.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's the obvious.
Yeah.
It's overlooked a lot, isn't it?
Yes,
Celebrating
it is.
people's success. And
It is.
You've got a clear vision, clearly, for what your life means. We're fascinated about how people bring that vision to life with a bigger team. How have you gone about that?
Right now, it's an interesting conversation because if you think about my goal to create transformational impact, people ask me, why am I still working? And I go, I've never worked a day in my life. And they go, what do you mean? I go, if all I'm doing is helping people, it's not work, it's joy. I find fun in it. Does that mean it's easy? No. Does that mean everything's smooth? No. Does that mean that? And so then it becomes like, okay, so I have nothing to prove but everything to offer. So why would I put a lid on that light? If I have everything to offer, then let me associate with people that can offer things to everybody around the world. And we sat down the other day and my partner has a signature on his email that says solving billion-person problems. And we decided the other day that we will have 1 billion users on the new learning platform around the world. And that's a dream that, could happen in 2 years, it could happen in 4 years. But it's like, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about making a dent in the world. I'm excited about having impact so that people can become the best version of themselves. And, there's no limit to what our technology can support and what our platform can support. So why not think big? And, we're already in 53 countries and we're only 10 months old. So let's just get to the rest of the world and figure it out. And so I wake up every day knowing that even though that's a big goal, I ask myself every day, who's next? Who's the one person who's next that's going to be in the right place at the right time? You know that saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Who's that person that tomorrow is going to log in to, learn something and it's going to be the boom. And they could go on to change the world. They could go on to change their city, their family, their town, their health. It's a big world out there. So that's my dream.
See, people are inherently curious that achieve great things. How does curiosity show up for you? Can you give us a story of how your curiosity's taken you down a particular path?
Yeah. So I had a season where I bought a company I shouldn't have bought. I lost about 90% of my net worth in about 24 months. And it was like, okay, my idea was the right idea. But I was not in the M&A business. I was not a client acquisition. I didn't buy companies to buy companies. I took a friend of mine who had a bigger company than I did, and he had a big vision to do something else in the world. And I said, let me help you out. Let me buy the company. And it was a great idea. But I made 2 mistakes, and one was I let the guy that run the smaller company, my 30-person company, take over a 300-person company. That was idea number one that probably I should have done something with differently. And then the second thing is I did not have the right fiscal policies in place for the CFO, and there was some financial abuse that was going on there. And at the end of the day, I went through some hardship and divested myself of the company and kind of looked at that, and I felt like a failure. I mean, I really did. I felt like here's this guy that's written all these books that talks about success, and all of a sudden I've got a visibly public failure. I bought a company and it failed. I get a call from Success Magazine, and they want to do an interview on my failure. And I go, there's no way that I am going to do an interview with you on my failure. The publisher called, and he said, listen, your story's an epic story. I know you want to make a difference in people's lives. You know as a success coach that failure is part of the deal, just like hot and cold, loud and soft, fast and slow, success and failure. So if you tell your story, think about how many businesses you might be able to help. So I'm sitting here going, I wonder how curious I should start to feel about failure being okay publicly. I knew it was part of my success, and part of everybody's success, but I ended up agreeing to do the interview. And it ended up being a 19-minute interview. It was published in Success Magazine. And I got a call that it had been downloaded 7 million times. And all of a sudden I realized that my voice of curiosity is like, how could I marry curiosity with courage? And that's the key, because curiosity without courage is just curiosity. But on a much more simpler level, how about waking up every day and realizing that everything can be improved? Like, what would happen if I got 1% better with my diet every day for a year? What would happen if I got 1% better with my financial discipline in a year? What would happen if I told my partner or my spouse that I love them every day in different and unique ways instead of like every week, putting those words out? I'd be curious about how great life could be if we just understand the little things compounded can make a big difference. So that's what I would tell people is you should always have curiosity about there's a better way. How could I be better here? How could I be better there? And then if there's a better way, you have to be okay with failure, because if you try a better way, that's a new way, you may not succeed the first time. You got to be good with that. And those two things together, I think, are big. Bold and brave. Nothing ever has happened in my life that is great without bravery. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I love that saying, is that risk nothing, risk everything. And I agree. I live by that. It's nothing good comes from not stepping out of your comfort zone, does it? None of us like it, but when you do, and you're always at that risk then, isn't it? It's putting yourself in the arena to fail. And for a lot of us, that's a really hard thing to do. But everyone you speak to who's achieved anything has been bold enough to try something new, and it's really generous of you to talk about the failures, because again, it's everyone's got them. We've all got them. And it's I think people are getting better at understanding that. I think it's a great part of the American culture. I like is that
I think it's a great part of life, because what I tell people is if you're not taking risks, you're making risks. You're either a risk taker or a risk maker. Yeah. And doing nothing is the greatest risk you can ever have. Yeah. And so, you are designed as a human being to go forward. You're not designed to give up. You're designed to, if you want this life to be a life that you enjoy, full of adversity, but full of blessings, then there's things you have to do differently, and they always require risk. But doing nothing differently creates a whole different set of risk circumstances. So I just like to leave people with that idea that, hey, we're not talking about uneducated risk and just rolling the dice. We're talking about do things out of your comfort zone, be curious, have courage and bravery, and realize if you don't make changes, like nothing changes until something changes. And one change can change everything. Yeah. That's a good risk worth taking.
Todd, who's been the greatest leader in your life?
My dad. My dad was a beautiful mentor to me, and had a beautiful 92-year life. And what inspired me about my dad is he graduated from Stanford with a degree in accounting, and about 3 years into accounting, hated accounting. And as he told the story, as I grew up, he decided when he was 30 to go to medical school. It took him 10 years before he was trained to be a doctor, and he practiced medicine from age 40 to age 65, and then he retired and lived another 37 years until he passed away. But I'll always remember my dad saying, life is too short to not do what you love. And he proved it. He proved it with 10 years of sacrifice, working a full-time job and going to medical school so that he could have 25 years of profound enjoyment in what he did vocationally. And I'll never forget that. I think I'm here today because I left mortgage lending after being a top producer because my dad said, you're always a big thinker and what you're doing locally is too small. And he said, do what you need to do. Because I was going to be a doctor. And he said, you're going to be a horrible doctor. go into business, go into relationships. But my dad's the greatest mentor ever in my life. taught me about faith, taught me about fitness, taught me about finance, taught me about family, taught me about all those things, all the F's that I love, right? And yeah, without question.
Oh, I love it when people immediately have a family member or a mother or a father that has that impact. It's pretty profound. We're a bit obsessed with this idea of collaboration, Todd, and what we do in our Aleda space. And when you connect people in an authentic way, as you described, the power of great collaboration. Clearly, you've spent a life being able to do that with unique people around the globe. Has there been one person you thought, oh, that's someone I'd love to connect and collaborate with on any level? Or is there a name that springs to mind?
Yeah. So Dr. John Maxwell is probably one of the most important connections I wanted to make, and I remember being influenced by him in a big stadium on a men's event. There was 55,000 people in the Dallas Cowboys stadium, and John was talking about purpose and faith, and I felt really, really just incredibly honored by listening to what he had to say, and I was so impacted by what he was saying that I bought the videotape after the session was over, and I went home and played that tape. My wife and I were sitting down. He was asking people in the audience, men in the audience, to put their hand up if they were going to agree to be a person of great commitment as a father, great commitment as a husband, great commitment as a leader. And all of a sudden we're watching the video and my hand is up in the air, and I got caught on videotape on this commitment, right, of accountability, and something told me I need to meet John Maxwell, and so I called him, and his assistant was very good at pushing me away, and John's too busy, blah, 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 blah. 17 months later, my publisher says, hey, listen, I just want you to know I had lunch with John Maxwell today, and I told him there's a young up-and-comer he needs to meet, Todd Duncan. And so his assistant called me and said, John would like to have you fly to Atlanta. I'm in California, and he said he'd like to spend the morning with you because Jack Countryman, who was my publisher, said he needs to meet you. So I flew to Atlanta. We had this beautiful meeting, and 2 weeks later, he asked me to help him co-host his simulcast to 70,000 business leaders. And I said, this is crazy. It took me almost 2 years to find somebody that knew John, and as it ends up, I agreed to do that simulcast. We sold more audio tapes. He had a monthly mentoring program. We sold more than he had ever sold. I get a call the next week that he wants me to fly back to Atlanta to take me to the Masters. And John became this force in my life that just helped me become the leader I needed to be, helped me become the dad I needed to be, the husband I needed to be. And we've been friends now for 30 years. You just never know. Nobody listening to you and I having this conversation, Luke, knows when the next person is going to show up in their life that can come alongside and make a profound difference. And I just want to remind, we cannot get through this life alone.
Beautiful note to finish on, Todd. I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed catching up with you, and also sharing as openly as you had. There's some great messages of a life well lived, and plenty more to come.
Yes.
So thank you. I really enjoyed it today. Thanks a lot.
I feel the same way. I feel lucky, blessed, and privileged to hang out with you for this time, and I hope that everybody listening has a moment where they decide, okay, I can make a change, I can be better, and I can get through the hard stuff, because there's always something on the other side of difficulty.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.